please.
Frederick Williams,
Present.
thank you. Dr. Mickelson,
Present.
Dr. Morrison,
Here.
Mrs. Bowley,
She's logging in. I see her.
okay, I'll count you in, Mrs. Bowley. Mr. Munoz,
Present.
Mrs. Stewart Campbell,
Here.
and Dr. Bonebrake.
He was on here earlier.
And- I'm here.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yep, thank you.
And Dr. Bonebrake. If we're ready for the Pledge of Allegiance, if we could all stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance with our students, that'd be great.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we see several students there. So there were 2 students in the screen. Ms. Miller, can you share with us or either have them just introduce themselves directly? What schools do your elementary and your younger child go to?
Do you want you to know what school you go to and what's your name and what grade you're in?
I'm Jada Fulton and I'm a junior at Topeka High School.
That's my child that plays basketball and she's very grateful you allowed them to play. And then this is Jerome and he is 3 and attends Sheldon.
All right, and he was trying to follow along with the pledge. We could see his little head bouncing up and down.
Mrs. Miller, we're glad they're playing too, and I'm glad they're doing it safely. So,
Yes, thank you so much.
and thank you for helping with the Pledge of Allegiance on short notice. We appreciate that.
Yeah, we try.
Keeping them away from lunch and their remote learning.
Yes.
Next on the agenda is adoption of the agenda. So entertain a motion to do that.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the agenda as presented.
We have a motion, and do I hear a second?
Second, Bonebrake.
Thank you, Dr. Bonebrake. Is there any discussion on the agenda or approval of the agenda? I don't hear any. So Mrs. Lister, we're ready to vote.
Ms. Lister, do you have all votes recorded or is there anything you'd like to say?
The vote from Dr. Morrison, Mrs. Bowley, and Dr. Bonebrake.
You have it?
I
I'm
don't.
in favor. Bonebrake's in favor. I
Okay.
don't see it pop up on my screen.
Yeah, it's not popping up on the shared screen by Mr. Gowan.
And it
That's
could be,
correct. It's a separate screen for your
Board docs.
board docs.
And you know, if you have a full screen on here, we can't go to the board doc screen. So, but I will vote aye.
All right.
Aye.
Mrs. Bowley,
Aye, Mrs. Bowley.
thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mrs. Lister. Next on the agenda is public comments, and we have one. Dr. Tracy Wagner. As Dr. Wagner gets queued up, I just have a couple of instructions to communicate to you. Patrons may speak to the board on items concerning items of concern to the school district. Each patron will be limited to 1 appearance not to exceed 3 minutes in duration. Public communication should be respectful. Allegations or complaints against individual employees must be presented in writing to the superintendent, must be signed by the individual or organization submitting the comments. Allegations or complaints against the superintendent must be presented in writing to the president or clerk of the Board of Education. Allegations or complaints against individual employees will not be allowed in open public meeting. Please state your name and address for the record, and then you'll get 3 minutes to share your comments.
Thank you so much. My name is Tracy Ellie Wagner. My address is 3303 Southwest Maupin, that's Maupin Court, Topeka, Kansas.
Go ahead, Dr. Wagner.
All right. So thank you all for giving me a chance to come and speak. I hoped to speak at the last meeting, but unfortunately found the form just a little bit too late to get it turned in time for the 4:30 deadline. And I sent another letter this morning with a few more articles attached in case I don't have enough time to convey everything. First, I'd like to say thank you for taking the time to thoughtfully and carefully consider all of these different issues that you have before you, especially with COVID. I know that that's a huge consideration because you're trying to take care of not just students' physical health, but the whole child. In 501, we take care of emotional needs, we take care of dental needs, we take care of a variety of other things. All right, and so we want to make sure that we're taking care of the whole child. And that's largely why I'm coming to you today, asking that perhaps you look at some of the things that we're doing in terms of allowing students to have fine arts performances. Okay, so at this point, we are allowing students to do athletics because we feel that's important for their mental health. I think doing some more things for the fine arts is equally important for those students. I enclosed a number of articles talking about the fact that when we wear masks, when we socially distance, and when we're outside, that dramatically reduces the rate of transmission of any illness, but certainly when we're interested in COVID-19, that's going to be true there as well. The other thing I'd like to point out is, I know there's been some concern you can still have aerosols even outside. That is correct. The aerosols are not going to magically disappear. But in terms of the rate of infectiousness, it has to do not just with whether or not those particles are present, but how densely those particles are or how much of a load the person has taken in. And I believe being outside will dramatically reduce that. And so as a result, I'm asking that you all consider allowing fine arts students to possibly schedule some performances outside for small ensembles, largely following the recommendations that you have put in place and made recently for the students to be able to practice indoors, just allowing them to do that outdoors so that they can have something else that they're looking forward to. I believe that's it. I won't take up any more of your time because I know you have a lot of things today, but I hope that you'll feel free to reach out and ask me additional questions. And again, I'm doing this. I have a child who's in choir and orchestra, but I sort of feel like all the kids in fine arts need to have a chance when we can do it safely to allow them to have some performances.
Thank you, Dr. Wagner. I think all the members of the board received your email this morning with the links. So we will take that into consideration. And I think Dr. Anderson responded already and asked Mr. Reynolds to contact you directly.
He actually called me just as I was trying to log on to talk to you guys.
Okay, so hopefully that conversation will happen and we can get an update from Mr. Reynolds on his recommendation for fine arts. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is disposition of business by consent. I'll entertain a motion to take care of that.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the items of business by consent as presented and authorize the board president or superintendent to sign this special project and purchasing contracts for and on behalf of the board.
Thank you, Reverend Williams. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second. This is Mr. Munoz.
Thank you, Mr. Munoz. Is there any discussion? I'd just like to recognize my employers. Hills Pet Nutrition has donated $3,000 to State Street Elementary. That's a school that we've adopted as a company. And due to COVID reasons, we've not really been able to participate much in person. So they've donated $3,000 to State Street. And then we received a $100 donation to the Topeka West Library Media Center in memory of Susan Peck. Is there any other discussion?
This is Mr. Munoz. I like to just point out the grant on broadband partnership adoption grant. I think it's really important, especially since we're all at home, and the work that Mr. Gowan and others have done to make sure that those who need it have it available. And I think I'd like to stress again the fact that there's still the ability for others who maybe think that they don't qualify to be able to enroll and to save some for their families, and most importantly, make sure their students are connected. So I want to point that out.
Thank you, Mr. Munoz. Any other discussion? Okay, I think, Ms. Lister, we're ready to vote, and I see it up on board docs on my screen.
It is open.
Thank you.
All board members should be able to see it now on board docs because we took off the split screen. If you can't see it, as Ms. Bowley is doing, she's raising her hand aye. If you just do that, if you can't see it, then Mrs. Lister will be sure to mark you on in. And we see Dr. Bonebrake is also showing aye.
Thank you. The votes are in. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mrs. Lister. This meeting at the end of the year is typically our shortest one of the year as we take care of some financial and administrative tasks that need to happen before the end of the year. And so we won't have any school highlights or superintendent's reports. We do have one action item that was a discussion item last meeting, approval of proposed course changes. And we'll entertain a motion to approve those.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the course changes as presented.
Thank you, Reverend Williams. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Campbell. Is there any discussion on the action? I don't hear any, so we're ready to vote.
And the vote is open. Mrs. Bowley?
I agree.
Aye, okay.
Aye.
Dr. Bonebrake?
He's indicated aye also by waving.
Thank you. That motion also carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mrs. Lister. Real quickly, before we adjourn to executive session, just wanted to see if any board members have any comments.
This is Dr. Morrison.
Thank you.
My only comment is, are we getting an update from Mr. Kathy about athletics?
He sent something, or Mrs. Lister sent something via email with an attachment.
Yes,
I'm not sure it was.
last evening.
Okay.
Mr. Kathy, I believe, is on the call. However, each week he's been sending an update. So Ms. Lister is sending that out. Dr. Morrison, I can follow up with you after this just to make sure we're getting that to everyone efficiently as a separate email. But I believe Mr. Kathy is also on. Mr. Kathy, are you on at this time?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Do you want to give that brief, President Mickelson, is it okay for him?
Yes, please. Yes, that'd be great.
Mr.
Right,
Kathy?
Just as a brief update, currently all three schools have been able to play a couple of games this semester so far. Highland Park, Topeka High, Topeka West all have one game to reschedule from that early game in December, in which was the day after which we got approval to compete. And then in addition to that, Topeka High has an additional 2 games for their boys and 1 game for their girls to schedule as a visiting team, as they were going to another school in which that host site was unable to wear masks during their event. And again, that was last week. This week, both Highland Park, Topeka, and Topeka West were able to compete last Friday and then again on Tuesday. And schools don't have any issues with athletes attempting to wear their masks during the entire game. And then since our last board meeting, we have had 4 schools outside of the school district that have stated that they are not willing to wear masks or require their athletes to wear masks at games when they are the host school at this point in time.
When is the first game against one of those 4 schools?
It will be when we return after, I believe it would be the earliest would be January 12th would be the earliest one. So we would bring that in front of the board for consideration at the January 12th would be the next date. January 7th board meeting is when we bring that before the board for their consideration.
Or do they give a reason why they don't want to advocate for the health and welfare of their students?
They have stated that it is a matter of local control, in which we are imposing our rules upon their school district, in which they should be the ones in which have the authority in which to tell their student athletes what they will and will not do at their sites.
That is so.
Even though the rules that we're imposing are CDC recommendations, I think that's that goes. That's as much as we can say. I do think, I mean, there's free testing available, and we can do away with masks if all the athletes are tested before the game.
That's probably better than wearing a mask, I would guess. I mean, more comfortable for the student athletes, I'm sure.
Has testing been done yet?
Testing is available at Hummer. It's 48 to 72 hours to get a result. So each student could go into Hummer. It's a saliva test, and it's free. So it's available if you all want to follow up and do that. I am very disappointed in the other districts, I'll tell you that.
I can't imagine why they can't advocate for their health of their students. You know, why wouldn't you?
It's not really the students. The students don't really express the disease. It's unlikely. It's the community that they intermingle with. Right. It's their parents and grandparents in the community. The students rarely show symptoms below 18. But we're not testing them. We haven't tested them yet. That was one of the criterion that I had requested before they play, that they get tested. I understand there's a 15 or 20-minute test, which costs less than $20, I think at Walgreens, maybe.
Yeah, it's not available as of yet.
So
can I add that just last night I went to do the test to see what it was like, and also we're going to be visiting. Oh, am I muted? Okay, can you hear me? People can hear me, right?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, the test, it was really amazing. My whole family, we were in and out of there in 10 minutes. Didn't have to get out of our car. We just drooled in a little like tube, and registering was 5 minutes for my family of 4, and they're going to text me the results here tomorrow. So I see no reason why every athlete can't get tested.
Getting back to, this is Mr. Munoz, to the issue of other teams and wearing masks. I'm trying to put myself in their position. And if somebody said, somebody came and said, you have to do this when we're at your games, I can see why they would be resistant. My question is, Mr. Cathy, has there been any communication? What's the communication that's been happening between our district and others, and sort of just trying to engage and as opposed to, because I can see how somebody might be opposed to this if it seems like they're their rules, and so could you speak to our communication with others and trying to get to some agreement to wear masks?
They have agreed when they come to our place that they would wear a mask. When we go to their place, none of those schools in which have stated that they are unable to wear or unwilling to wear a mask at their site. They have stated that they're not requiring their athletes to wear them during competitions at any other point in time. They are falling within the Kansas State High School Activities Association guidelines of wearing a mask on the sideline at all times, but not required during the competition site at this point. So that is kind of what their statement was as to that fact, that it's, they're not requiring their athletes to do it on a regular basis. So why would they require them, and why would we impose our rules upon them when we come to their site?
No, because they just don't care about their community. Now, the wearing of masks, I've watched the Friday night highlights, and none of the masks cover the noses. All the masks are down at the mouth. So we're not even wearing masks correctly. But I agree with Mr. Munoz that if we could get testing before the games, then the necessity of the mask is not as important, except the other team may not be testing.
I would wonder if I could disagree with that. Because they got a test 2 days before the game doesn't mean that they may not have the virus on the day of the game. So unless they're tested right before a game, I mean, they can be infected or show symptoms several days later after their test. But my question is I don't know why we would be surprised on this when we're talking about, you know, local issues and wearing a mask across the state, the governor requesting that our school board requesting that. I can see other school boards refusing that. So I don't know that it's a big surprise for me.
So with that, if I can just kind of give having given that update, you'll get that weekly report each week. One of the items I will share, as we believe everybody cares about deeply about their community, but makes the best choices that they feel are best for their own communities. We will share that our staff is actually now trained for testing last week and this week. We now have our supplies. You should know that our players have utilized Hummer. So Hummer is in operation, and as families choose to utilize that, families and staff have been using that. In fact, I believe we actually delayed one meeting. Am I correct, Mr. Kathy? We delayed one basketball meeting after one student tested as a safety precaution. Is that correct?
Yes, so we have taken a safety precaution with one student who did utilize the testing as Hummer Sports Park. And
thank you.
So
with that, and did you have anything else you wanted to say on that item? And I know with this meeting, it's so short, but I wanted to just give that quick update for them as well.
No, I had nothing additional. Thank you very much.
And so with that, and thank you for just confirming, I wanted to make sure I was accurate. So we did delay at least one meeting, and as we move forward, we'll be prepared to continue to do that. So our staff is now trained. We now have kits. We are using Hummer until January because it's free and available right here in the district. And we will make sure that we let the other teams know that we also have testing services available again, and we'll share that with them. And then we appreciate them wearing the mask when they come on come to our schools. The other thing that we will do, we'll just make sure that we have an extra monitoring piece on that the masks are fully pulled up and that we're giving those continued reminders. So we'll plan to do that follow-up. You'll get your next follow-up from Mr. Kathy, I think next Friday. Is that when you're sending that out, Mr. Kathy?
I will send it out before we leave for break, because our last games before break are tomorrow night. So we'll have tomorrow night's games, and we will not have another competition until after we return from January.
All right, so we'll get you that next break, that next update, and then please let Mr. Kathy or I know if you have any questions.
Are there other board member comments before we adjourn to executive session?
Yes, Dr. Mickelson, I'd like to say that I'm very concerned about some of the photos I've seen and the footage of our basketball games of our athletes not wearing the masks correctly under their chin, their noses. Like one photo I saw in the newspaper, there's a nose hanging out, and it just really, really concerns me because our approval of moving forward with competitions was on the condition that masks be worn correctly and that it be enforced. So I'm just worried about this. And I'm also worried about these other districts that won't want to play us. It just really, I feel very strongly that mask enforcement, correct mask wearing needs to be enforced for all players. So this issue really needs to be addressed for the safety of all athletes and their families. And in happier news, I'm really looking forward to watching Topeka West's production, their virtual production of, what's it called? The Pandemic That Didn't Define Them. It looks fantastic. So I just want to encourage everyone who can to support our performing arts and tune in to Topeka West's production. It's tomorrow night and Saturday night, and there's another time, but I'll be attending tomorrow night. And also, I just want to finally just a huge thank you to all of our staff, our TPS community, and I want to wish everybody a peaceful holiday and 2021, there's going to be a lot of good opportunities and a lot of good news in 2021 that I look forward to. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Any other comments?
This is Reverend Williams. The College Prep Academy at TCALC has been selected to be a presenter at the upcoming National School Board Association annual conference in April. It's an opportunity for our district to be showcased with other districts across the country. And originally that was going to be in New Orleans, but I got communication earlier in the week that they've decided to go virtually online. And also, anybody know any graduating seniors? The deadline for the Living the Dream scholarships applications are due December 31st by midnight. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Reverend Williams. I only have a brief comment that I'd like to support Dr. Wagner's suggestion that we consider allowing outdoor events to occur with proper PPE for our fine arts group. So I know Mr. Reynolds is going to contact her and possibly come back with a recommendation. So I'm in support of that, assuming it's safe for everybody.
This is Mr. Munoz. I just want to say that this week, at least my students, and I know lots of other students, have been participating in a Spirit Week, and so that's been fun as we've found hats to wear, and then I think white shirts for this winter, time, and then so it's been just one way to add a little bit of fun to our virtual learning. The other thing I want to say is that I really appreciated the work that our administration has done as they've gone out and supported our individuals who are on the front lines and delivering presents to kids, and just I'm sure that's incredibly meaningful. And so I want to thank all those who've gone out of their way to try and collect presents and gifts to make this time memorable. So.
Thank you, Mr. Munoz. Mrs. Boley.
I just wanted to thank the district. I noticed on our agenda that we are looking into air purifiers to add one more layer of protection in our classrooms for our students when and if the time comes that they come back. And I just appreciate so much that we're adding another layer to keep our students and our staff safe. So I appreciate that, and I want to thank the district for doing that. And have a happy holiday, everybody.
Thank you, Mrs. Boley. Is there anyone else that has anything to share? Okay, we'll entertain a motion to recess to executive session. I'm suggesting for maybe 10 minutes.
Mr. President, I move the board recess to executive session to discuss individual employee contracts and performance pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception on Tacoma for 10 minutes with no further action except adjournment.
Thank you, Reverend Williams. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second. This is Mr. Munoz.
Thank you, Mr. Munoz. Is there any discussion on the motion? Not hearing any, so we're ready to vote. And what we're going to do, just for everybody's, so we don't, Mr. Gowan is going to allow us to stay on this Zoom call. And so don't log off. He's going to excuse everyone else. And that may take a minute or two. I will assume ownership of the call. And then once we're ready, he will excuse himself. So just so you're aware of how that's going to happen.
Vote is open. Mrs. Boley?
She's
aye.
Aye.
All right. Dr. Bonebrake?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mrs. Lister. We'll just hang tight for a moment while Mr. Gowan